Welcome one and all to another episode of Dragon Ball Head Scratchers, and today I'm going to be dealing with a subject that I promised that I was going to do last episode, but because I was dealing with some faulty information, which was my own fault, I decided to delay it until I could get the concrete facts. Now, the purpose of this series, like I said, in the first time around, that it was going to deal with some questions about the Dragon Ball universe that aren't very well explained or just confuse people for whatever reason. And because we're dealing with something like that, I wanted to present my points as factually accurate as I possibly could. And so when I went to record it last time, there were some problems. Like I said, I was dealing with faulty information, and so I went to the most reliable source I could find, Kanzenshu, and saw their own manga guide to just be 100% sure this time that I knew what the hell I was going to be talking about. Because if it turned out that I was, trying to make a big point and then I was dealing with bad information or bad translation or whatever, I would probably lose my shit because I'd have to redo the video. So with that out of the way, we're going to be talking about how did Vegeta learn so much about controlling his own power and sensing other people's power. Now, when Vegeta arrives on Namek, he has two encounters with Qui and Dodoria, some of Frieza's most powerful soldiers, with the exception of Zarbon and, of course, the Ginyu Force. And during these two encounters, we see that Vegeta has picked up a couple of tricks from his battle on Earth. The first trick, which he tells Qui, is battle power control, the ability to increase his own strength willingly, at his own command, at his own leisure, which he uses to demonstrate his new battle power of 24,000. So everybody is kind of freaked out about this. Qui is, Zarbon, Dodoria, they're all freaking out, and then Vegeta tells Qui that this is a skill that he picked up on Earth. Frieza also states that Vegeta was, out on the front lines and that he probably picked up some kind of new skill on Earth as well. And later on, when Vegeta encounters Dodoria, he tells him that he doesn't need scouters anymore, that he's also learned how to sense other people's energies without the need of the device, which is kind of a staple of the Frieza army because that they can't sense battle power or track anybody without the use of those little devices, which Vegeta has, no need of anymore. Now, a lot of people, like to ask themselves, like, how did Vegeta learn this? How could he possibly learn something like this seemingly out of nowhere? But when you really think about it, the concept of Vegeta and other characters just learning techniques from seeing them once isn't really far-fetched. Because Vegeta, during his battle against Ozaru or Graded Gohan, he actually uses the Kienzan, which he only ever saw twice. Once, actually, sorry. He only saw it once, and he's able to create a perfect Kienzan, which he uses to cut off Gohan's tail. Ultimately, it was all for nothing because Gohan almost killed him anyway, but still, Vegeta has a precedent for learning attacks and techniques that he only saw once before. And Vegeta does not have, exclusivity on this little ability. Goku learns the Kamehameha just by watching it. Back in, one of the very, very, very first chapters of Dragon Ball, Master Roshi, or the Muten Roshi, arrives at the Ox King's castle, which is on fire, and fires a Max Power Kamehameha to try and get to kill the fire. Ultimately destroys Ox King's castle, but Goku is so impressed by the technique, so amazed by it, that he's able to execute a very small but still fairly efficient Kamehameha of his own just by watching it without needing to practice the technique. Ten Shinhan also does this in the 22nd Budokai Tenkaichi arc, where he, uses the Kamehameha as well without the need of learning it or practicing with it. He just sees it once and then he uses it against Jackie Chun. Sorry, it was totally Jackie Chun. Anyway, so there is a precedent for characters learning how to, just pick up on techniques just by watching them and just by seeing them. And the Vegeta that we see in the Saiyan saga, or the Saiyajin saga, or the Vegeta saga, or whatever you want to call it, during the Saiyan invasion, Vegeta is a very different character from who he is later on. While he does still have his Saiyan pride, and he does still have kind of the arrogance about him, he is not above, sitting back and tactically thinking about the situation, which is why he's able to remain very successful on Namek until the Ginyu Force arrives and completely changes the game by giving Frieza more scouters. Throughout the entirety of the Saiyan arc and like about the first chunk of the Namek arc, Vegeta is very tactical. He's not above using dirty tactics to win. He still has his pride, like I said, but he is a very calmer, much smarter character than what he ultimately becomes in the later sagas. And with this in mind, with this kind of Vegeta in mind, we can actually very easily infer how he was able to pick up these techniques. The first technique he picks up on is their ability to sense energy. Goku arrives on the lookout, and he summons the Flying Nimbus, or Kingtone, and flies towards the battlefield. And the second he shows up back on Earth, Piccolo, Krillin, and Gohan all sense his energy, and Vegeta, there's a very small panel where Vegeta says, they can actually sense other people's energy, and then he goes to read Goku's power level, which is when they find out it's 5,000, and that kind of freaks Vegeta out. Then later on, Vegeta also spots, Goku intentionally powering himself up, to over 8,000, and then powering himself up even more with a Kaioken repeatedly over and over again. And because we already have a precedent for Vegeta just learning techniques and abilities just by seeing them once, it's actually fairly easy to say that Vegeta was able to just learn these different abilities just by watching them. He saw Goku power up multiple times. He, stood back and watched how everybody else can sense energy, and likely picked up on that himself. The one curious case of this is the fact that both Vegeta and Nappa power up at different points, and yet Vegeta cites battle power control as what he learned on Earth. Vegeta powers up against, the humans, he, increases his aura, there's a big, shock of electricity surrounding his whole body before he goes to take out Ten Shinhan. And then Vegeta, later on, during the very early part of his battle with Goku, he also kind of powers up. The entire surrounding area grows dark, dark clouds are surrounding it. Goku, says that it feels like the whole planet is trembling. There's like a big-ass hurricane all around the place, and that's just because Vegeta powered up. But I think what Vegeta is saying is that not that he learned how to power up. What Vegeta is saying is that he learned battle power control, which is being able to intentionally increase your own power and being able to intentionally lower your power to undetectable levels. And I think that's what Vegeta is going on. It's not that he doesn't have some level of battle power control, because his beam clash with Goku obviously proves that Vegeta can, just like everybody else on Earth, unintentionally increase his power by pouring all of it into a singular point and then firing it off at an enemy. He's just saying that he has achieved a better quality level of battle power control, a level of quality no one in Frieza's army is capable of. Like, Frieza is always at 500,000 in his first form. He can't lower it, he can't raise it without transforming and such. He can't, he can probably increase it if he, focused it into a single blast or something, but he doesn't really have a refined level of control over his own power, whereas Vegeta does. So, there isn't really much room left for speculation, if you ask me. I think that the evidence really speaks for itself. Vegeta, he sat back and observed a lot of the battle against the Earthlings. He partook in several battles against them himself, and he already has kind of an established, ability of his own to just copy other people's techniques just by seeing them. And when you look at how he fought everybody else and how he was able to test himself against them, I think it's fair to say that Vegeta just learning all this kind of stuff by observing and just kind of memorizing it is, the explanation. It's not a great explanation. You might not like it. I'm not saying you should like it, but I don't personally think that Vegeta just learning these techniques is bullshit. I think that there is enough evidence in and out of itself that you can infer to understand how he was able to learn what he does in the beginning of the Namek saga. Now, if you guys have any theories of your own as to how Vegeta was able to do this. Feel free to share them, of course, but I think that this is one where we can pretty much say Vegeta saw it, he copied it, boom, he learned it. There.